This is Ben Tint here. We have a slightly different episode format today, and I think I'm going to stick with it for a little bit. I did my normal interview, and then afterwards, I did a little bit of edits here and there. Scott and I talked for over 2 hours, and there were some random fun breaks in between. Some of my son's toys went off, and I had some equipment problems. I kind of edited around that a little bit. I did that because I wanted to, make it a little more watchable for someone like me. If I was watching that, I would say, "Oh, what's this host's problem? Let's just jump right to the good stuff." But I also wanted it to be genuine because the conversation that I had with Scott Tennant was very genuine. He's a really nice guy, and there's a lot of room in the conversation, a lot of air to breathe, a lot of things to think about. First, before we get started, I just want to say thank you to everybody who's been watching, people who have been sending me messages, people who have been, the people that I know on a day-to-day basis have been saying things in person. That's really helpful, so thank you very much. I want to give a special shout out to Texas Guitar Society and Peter Davis for sending in questions. They asked questions that I sort of integrated into the conversation and then asked them. So I hope you enjoy this. This is a really, really important interview, and I hope you have a good time. Okay, we are recording. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I have my camera setup evolves a little more every time I do one of these episodes. I am now on a tripod stacked on top of some DVDs, Arrested Development, Chappelle Show Season 2, and I think 6 Feet Under, I'm not sure. I will finally invest in a nice camera someday for this stuff. I'm super excited about tonight's episode. I met this person a couple times over the past several years when he came to the University of Hartford, and we are also twinning with the shirts tonight. Scott Tennant, thank you so much for coming to The Lone Guitarist.
My pleasure. It's great to be here, and not so lone now.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how I came along that name. It just was like I was like, all right, I'm going to come up with a name today, and I decided to be The Lone Guitarist.
You need a theme tune, I think, with the title like that. You need a theme tune.
It's Spanish Romance.
Okay. Oh, cool.
No.
Yeah, The Lone Guitarist. That adds a slightly different tilt to The Lone Guitarist than I was thinking.
Yeah,
I was thinking more the heroic, cowboy on a horse. Maybe
William
Tell Overture, something like that.
Maybe when I get around to interviewing some more composers, I can have someone write me a really cool theme song for the beginning. What I usually ask everybody at the beginning of each of these shows is, how are you during this whole COVID fiasco?
I have to say it's going pretty well. We were one of the first universities on this coast to immediately go online last March. And ironically, because we're earthquake prone out here, there was already a plan in place, more or less, to be online, if we had to be online while things got repaired, but we weren't necessarily prepared to be online for a year or more. So we started out doing really well, and then we had to have a lot of meetings and plan on, how to proceed. So the summer was pretty much all meetings and figuring out Zoom. I'd never heard of Zoom before. Wow. And so figuring out Zoom, not just that, but also figuring out how to teach. And it was about sound quality, and we invested in getting all of our guitar majors, microphones and cameras if they needed it, paying for upgrade for their internet if need be, because we prefer they be hardwired in, which all of them can't do. Right. So we spent all summer and the rest of the spring and all summer doing that. So now we're pretty dialed in, and yeah, it's actually been eye-opening. Really, I find there's been a lot of improvement actually in people's playing.
Oh, really? Are you going into the university at all, or is it just completely remote?
It's totally remote. I did drive my vacation. Okay, not that I ever take vacations, because I don't. But uh, I live in a decent sized apartment, but it's still, I have no yard, I have no front or backyard. So to get out, my vacation has been getting in my car at night, opening all the windows and just driving so I can get some air, like a dog that just kind of hangs out the window, getting blasted with air. And in doing so, one night I decided I'm going to drive by campus and see what it's like, because it's been months. I drove by and there's one entrance open. They have maybe 10 or 12 entrances. There was one entrance open only, and it's very guarded, extremely guarded. All of the walk-in gates are shut. So there's just one way in and that's it. So they're very, very cautious about, you have to present a health questionnaire that you've gotten a flu shot within the last month or so, and you have to check off on all of these to have the COVID test and all this. So it's a safe place, and hopefully we'll be back in the fall. Hopefully,
yeah. So all sorts of wonderful stuff to talk about, and if you don't mind, I'd like to rewind the clock as much as we can. I like to ask everybody that's on the show kind of how you got into music.
It was just me and my brother and my parents, small family in Detroit. And I was born in 62, so late 60s and all. There was always music in the house being played, not by my parents, but just on a record player, one of those little portable record players where we had little 45s.
45, yeah.
And radio, and of course whatever came on the TV. There were shows, Lawrence Welk, the show, things like that, and there was always music. And so I don't know, guitar. My parents tell me that both my brother and I were asking for a guitar, but before I can remember. I mean, I got my first one at 6.
Oh wow!
But before that, we were getting little gifts every Christmas. These little plastic ukulele type guitars, and we'd break them, of course, and then we get another one at Christmas. And finally, I got on Christmas when I was 6. I got a real one, a small steel string. So that was the beginning of that. And I thought, oh great, I could just start playing this. But my parents said, look, you wanted this, so you're going to take lessons. And I'm going, no, I assure you, I don't need lessons. And so they said, I assure you, you're going to take lessons. And if you don't, we take the guitar back and get our money back. I'm going, wow. Don't do that. So twist my arm. Wow. So I started taking lessons just to appease my parents, and at a local music store, and within walking distance where we lived. Yeah, because we didn't have a car growing up, so just everything luckily was kind of in walking distance. And at 6, I started taking. I had this steel string little acoustic guitar, and I started taking lessons at the music store, and started out in Alfred's method book, the basic guitar method. I remember, and it started there. Practicing 15 minutes a day. They would pull out a drawer on the sock drawer. I would sit at the edge of my bed and put the music there. Yeah. And my mom would literally sit with me for 15 minutes and make me practice. Yeah. And I'm glad she did. I resented it at the time because my friends were outside calling, Scott, come outside, come outside. And so, but I'm really happy she did, because it did, like with anything, once you see something happen, to improve, improvement happen, sure, you kind of want to stick with it. Yeah. And I started seeing some improvement. I thought, this is kind of fun. The calluses started getting better. And it made me want to practice on my own. Yeah. And then especially when I got electric guitar, I think I was maybe 8 or 9 when I got that. Yeah. And started playing. So it was fun, it was, I actually wanted to practice. And then from there, the classical thing came in, because my teacher at the time, in these books that she had me working in, there were these little melodies by Tchaikovsky, Swan Lake Melody and
Sure, sure.
Chopin Melody. And I thought, well, this is really cool. I love this. And my mom would be, singing all of these tunes. She knew them all anyway. And I asked my teacher, what is this? Is there a book with just this stuff in it? And she said, well, that's called classical music. And there's a thing called classical guitar, but, I don't teach that. But there's specialists, that do. So I was 10. So by the time I was 11, I was taking classical lessons.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then that's it.
Yeah. And what a place to grow up in the time you did. I don't know the geography of Detroit too well, but I do know that early 60s and then further into the 60s is really the explosion of Motown in your hometown. I don't think they moved out into California until the 70s.
Mhm.
But I mean, God, that's the, like, I would imagine wherever you turned, there was great music as a young child.
There totally was, in fact, there's a high school that's downtown Detroit, still there, Cass Tech, Cass Technical High School. And to get in there, as opposed to just your regular neighborhood high school, you had to have good grades. But if you got in, you could kind of major in something. You could major in music or, pre-law, all that stuff. It was really a good place to go. So I got in and studied music. And Motown was literally maybe 10 blocks up the street, the old Motown.
Wow.
And of course, it had already, this was started high school, mid 70s. So all of the music teachers at Cass Tech at that time, all of them were previously backup singers at Motown or a rehearsal pianist. The guy, our choir director, Mr. Gleason, I still remember his name. Wow. And Mr. Corey, I can't remember. I remember these names, but Mr. Corey, Walter, so that he was the pianist for the chorus class, and he had been sort of a rehearsal pianist and keyboardist for sessions at Motown. The choir director was a baritone, he sang in many, backup groups. So we were so lucky. Thinking back on it, we knew it at the time that it was an amazing place, but thinking back on the people that we had to, as our mentors there, is just blows my mind.
Sure. Yeah, there's a really good movie that I show. I teach at a middle school. I teach middle school music right now, and there's a movie that I showed to my 8th graders. That's called Hitsville, and it's on Showtime. And we watch it through Amazon because I have their little handshake agreement or whatever it is between them. But there's such great history, and they talk about the merging again between, and I say again because you see this everywhere. You see this right as blues becomes a thing, from slave songs to blues to rock and roll to rock to Motown. You see this merging of this culture of the people and the traditions of the, traditional music or academic music, whatever you want to call it, because all of those session players were jazz players, and they had to get the guys who were really good to sit in and play on, 3,000 tracks over 15 years, Wow. I think that stuff is incredible. If I could have been a fly on the wall with Berry Gordy and Smokey Robinson, I think that would be a good wall to be on.
Absolutely. It's just incredible. Yeah.
So when did you so you discovered classical guitar kind of when you were like a young teen?
Yeah. And then of course, as I say, my music store teacher, she was the one who suggested I maybe look for classical teacher. And I looked at my parents looked around. We found plenty of teachers in town, not plenty, but enough. They all came from Wayne State University. They were still grads. There were still students there, but they were teaching in local places. And so found out there was a Michigan Guitar Society. There was later found out there was a Flamenco Society of Michigan. It was very strong in that because we were right across. Literally, I grew up within walking distance of the Detroit River, and we could see, if I got on the rooftop, I could see Canada,
Oh
Windsor.
wow.
And so, that they also had a very strong classical guitar presence too. So there was a lot in our town, and we had visitors all the time coming through. Illyrio Diaz and Gilia and Evangelos and Lisa. I don't know if you remember the Greek duo.
No, I
And,
don't know. I actually don't know that name.
yeah, Evangelos and Lisa Asimakopoulos. They were Presti and Lagoya sort of devotees, and students.
Okay, sure.
Had studied in Paris, and who else? I mean, Michael Lorimer, Parkening. Michael Lorimer would come through all the time and perform, and I would take master classes from him. I took my master class with Diaz, and so whoever was in town, the Guitar Society would get them and have them do a master class, and so I played for all of those. Yeah, I wanted to be a rock and roll bass player.
Oh yeah.
But for some reason, I was only interested in playing bass. If I could play bass in a band, I wasn't interested in playing guitar. Weird.
Yeah.
And I never did. I just kind of stuck with. My studies started ramping up for both school and the pieces I was working on. My lessons got harder and harder. Then later, I was of course thinking about college and keeping my grades up, and also things got just serious. And before you know it, the band thing just never happened with me. But my friends got jealous because while they were playing, practicing with their garage bands at home, I was actually accompanying flamenco dance classes. And so I'll tell you can't beat that. I didn't, I had no regrets at all not being in the garage band. I would go to the dance instructors downstairs studio, and the students would come in, and the younger ones were my age, and then up to the more advanced, and it was so much fun.
Nice. How did you get in? So let's talk about high school classical guitar experience. So you're talking about a high school where you can major in music, right? And I'm assuming that's what you did.
Yep.
But your classical guitar teacher was at that school or no?
No, the classical guitar was all separate. At the school, we had no guitar at the school straight. Maybe there is now, but sadly then there was no guitar in that school. But I had to study violin, and I had to play in the orchestra, and I had to study both, tenor and bass trombone.
Okay.
And play those in the band. And then I had to take piano and music theory and history. So I had to take a little bit of each one. I really enjoyed violin, even though I was second violin, last chair up in the nosebleed section of the orchestra. And my trombone playing, I was made to practice outside. Even in Detroit winters, I had to go outside and practice. But such a good education. I mean, just to know, not only do you know other instruments, but it improves it improved my guitar playing a lot on violin, just playing legato.
Sure, I'm sure. That's interesting because I taught guitar in electric guitar and classical guitar in various locations before I got my job now as a music teacher, and I would sometimes have kids that were taking guitar the way that maybe you were studying trombone or violin. Like, this isn't my main instrument, but I have an interest in this, or my parents want me to do it, or something along the lines of that. I have such high respect for those kids that can do that. Actually, funny story, this was before I got really into teaching classical guitar. This was when I first started my undergrad and was still kind of doing the rock thing. There was a kid who came in, and I'm there's no joke, no exaggeration here. He never picked up an electric guitar. His parents bought him one. He's about 16, 17 years old, and went from no theory, no nothing at all, to being able to play the chorus, the refrain from Cliffs of Dover in about 6 weeks. And I was like, okay, this is great. And then 2 weeks later, he goes, oh, that was fun. I want to practice piano now. And I said, well, hold on a second. There could very well be a very good career for you here if you practice the right way and you take the right steps. He said, no, I want to play piano. And
I mean, I didn't necessarily not consider other ways to make music my profession, you know, when you're in high school, and this is a trip. I don't know if this still happens, but when I was in high school, by the time you're about, you know, a junior, senior, you start getting recruited by certain colleges, local colleges. You start getting recruited by the military,
Mhm.
you know, Army and Navy. Everybody calls you up and then puts a real positive spin on it. And my dad had been in the Marines way back, and the Marines were calling and they got my number right away. Oh, you're a musician. Well, hey, Marine band, you know, there's a place for you,
Yeah.
you know, and, you know, you play trombone, you're in.
Yeah.
You're in. I mean, you just come, you play for us, and we train you. We give you trombone lessons, and you get, you know, you're in the band, and you know, you're in. And we'll pay for any college you want after that. And I'm going, well, hey, this is awesome. Thank you. and these calls went on and on and on and on for about a year, you know, and they thought they had me, you know, and they almost did. And my last question to them is, by the way, do I have to go through boot camp? And they go, well, basic training, yeah, you still have to go through boot camp. And I'm going, oh, well, thanks anyway. And I hung up. You know.
So you were this close to being a stone cold killer.
Yeah, but with the trombone, which was a painful death.
Yeah.
To anybody who would hear me.
Yeah. It starts as a low rumbling.
Yeah. But now, actually, I just gave a lesson to somebody, a young man who is in the Army Reserve, and he plays guitar in a band, you know, this dance band or casual band that they have. So there's guitar now that you can actually be a guitar player in one of the, you know, armed service bands if you want to. And it, you know, for some it's a great deal because they will pay for education. But anyway, no, that wasn't about to happen. It was always guitar. That's the thing. That's my main, you know.
Sure.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
so you leave high school, and where'd you go next?
I packed up my Chevette and I drove straight to LA, you know, to come to USC. I had been toying with the idea of for a few years of seriously considering actually going to the Royal Academy of Music in London, because the one big trip my brother and I went on with our parents was to Europe, and we got to see London. And my dad took me personally one day over to the Royal Academy because I thought John Williams taught there.
Right.
So I thought if I showed up, I would just see him hanging out.
Yeah.
You know,
just
right?
playing Leanda.
Just hanging out, waiting for me. Yeah, just said, Scott, there you are. Come on in. and so anyway, but I was blown away by the school and the history and whoever was teaching there at the time. I think it was Hector Quine, who had a very good reputation, but the whole idea of living in London and studying there, being a musician there, was really appealing to me until I met and started studying every summer with Pepe Romero. I would go to Houston every summer for his classes there. And I thought, you know, he's at USC. I've really got to do my best to get into USC. So that was my focus after that. So I came right from high school. I came right out to USC. Well, let's see. I was 12 or 13. My mom took me to a concert of the Romeros.
In Detroit.
Outside of Detroit somewhere.
Okay. Yeah.
And met them, and that's when my mom, who was kind of a stage mom, she was, you know, very not shy, let's say.
Yeah.
And she was, hey, my son plays very well, you know, and I was only 12, but she said, you know, could he take lessons from you?
Yeah.
And Pepe smiled and he said, well, I call this woman here, and he gave us a number. She runs this master class in Houston every summer. So we called and arranged it, and I went out there with my mom. The first couple years or 3, I went with my mom. And I just, you know, I fell in love with not only more deeply in love with the guitar, but with Pepe's personality, his style of teaching, playing.
Yeah.
And so it was a no-brainer. I mean, I I worked really hard, got good grades enough to get a decent scholarship, and uh, I just was accepted, and I just drove right out there.
Yeah. What did what was it like? Or let me say this: what was the transition like from studying with somebody at the, I guess, the high school level, if that's fair to say, or somebody that was bringing you up to that level, to then go and study with somebody who had um still, if we're talking what, mid 70s, late,
We're
no, we're
talking
talking
at
early.
that. I started at USC in 19. I graduated high school in 1980.
Okay,
So, and I started
so
USC.
even at that point, he had a pretty big career. And so what was it like to change from a setting of being sort of like, I would imagine, the big fish in a little pond, to going and
Mhm.
studying out there with a legend? What was that like?
Well, I've already been at his classes for 4 years
Hmm.
every summer, and I knew him really well by then. I knew his style of teaching, and he was prepping me every time I would see him 2 weeks each summer. He would prep me about what happened at USC, what I'd have to do. He got me in touch with the head of the guitar department at the time, and the people who would eventually be my advisors. And so I already knew going in what I would have to do. But what I wasn't prepared for was LA.
Hmm.
You know, I mean, it was big. I mean, it was big. And in 1980, it was smoggy. It was so uh, infamous for smog. And the smog was a real thing. It really burned your eyes. And you got used to that in a weird way. You know, it's just like if you're, after the first year, you just kind of got used to feeling sluggish and
You say it with
coughing a lot.
such admiration, like such fond memories of your eyeballs burning.
Oh, those were the days. No, I say that. Well, because it's mind blowing when I look back on it. It was just to let you know. So I started in 1980, 1984. I graduated with my bachelor's, but that's the year the Olympics came to LA, and I was still living near campus, and I'd be walking around during the summer when all the athletes were there,
Mhm.
and there were athletes who, the smog looked like fog.
Wow.
You could see a few blocks, 3 blocks maybe, if that. And there were athletes I would pass, and they were just literally buckled over trying to breathe,
Oh
you
my
know.
goodness.
And so that it was a real deal. So over the years with emission standards and all that, now it's no, and when it gets hot, we still have smog, but generally it's
Sure.
I don't think it's any worse than any other big city.
Yeah. Yeah. LA, I feel like LA changes every 10 years. It's known for something different every decade.
Mm.
Uh, the 90s was murder, and and
Yeah,
gangster rap.
yeah.
And now it's and then I equate LA with earthquakes and also some pretty liberal thinking, which is, in my opinion, a pretty good thing. So I mean, yeah, and then so now mid 80s, I feel like that was almost like the golden era of classical guitar in one respect, just because you had so many people starting their career. Um, GFA doesn't come around for until a little bit later. I think I want to say 92 or 93 was the first one. But you had I guess, schools popping up all over the place. You had people cutting albums. John Williams was still doing a lot of stuff. Um, what was that like to sort of build a career with this formal education? What were you doing for work then?
Well, I was just for cash in pocket. I was doing gigs like all my friends were. I was playing at restaurants and
Mm,
for birthday parties, New Year's Eve parties, you name it,
yeah.
and was doing pretty well at that. I had a few students on the side, getting better at my teaching skills at the time, and but in 1980, the week I arrived in LA, the USC guitar quartet then was thrown together. Pepe had already planned, okay, Scott, if you're coming, we'll put these 4 people together and you'll be a quartet and I will coach you in my classes. And so that very first week, John Dearman, who lived, I was in a university apartment building and he was in a house 3 houses down. He showed up with a stack of music and he says, hey, I'm John. Pepe says to learn this for next week. And we'll rehearse on Sunday or something like that. See you later.
Yeah.
And so, and we did, that was we were already doing that. And right from the start, we were not just a student group, but we were doing all kinds of gigs as a quartet.
Yeah.
So I was always working and, and I had a work-study job at USC too. So, it was more than surviving. I was doing pretty well. And gradually we started getting, we changed our name after long thought, LA Guitar Quartet, And
how did you come up with that name?
well, I have to think back. I guess LA Guitar, 4 of us.
What one of the things that I always enjoyed about my short-lived time in a quartet was being exposed to a lot of different music, because the solo rep is pretty extensive and there's new stuff coming out every day. But the quartet, that's when you get into some really cool transcriptions, and then really rethinking your spot in the world as a guitarist. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, you mean specifically coming from a quartet?
Yeah. Just what was that experience like for you?
Well, you're right. It kind of, suddenly you get to play things by Faya and, Rossini and things that guitarists don't normally get to have experience in. We're pretty much loners. Just as
the Lone Guitarist Podcast.
The Lone Guitarist Podcast. And we're kind of loners, and we don't have the option of just going and playing in a community orchestra or something like that, and which is sad and good at the same time. So I guess the first thing that comes to mind is being exposed to, orchestral composers and repertoire, right? And it was so much fun just to hear what it sounded like. Yeah, you remember from your quartet days too, your ensemble days, how things just open up and you feel like, wow, this is, being part of a larger classical group somehow.
Yeah.
So that was the feeling. And a lot of arrangements, as you say, we started out doing Pepe Romero's arrangements. Our teacher at the time at USC, Jim Smith, who really kind of started the guitar program at USC, he had a lot of arrangements already, and we did some of his, and then Bill started arranging. Yeah. And then it was, from there we had seemed like an endless amount of repertoire year after year. And then other composers started writing for 4 guitars and.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
What was the landscape like for these sort of mid, I don't want to say this in a disparaging way to smaller gigs, but sort of like the mid-tier gig level, right? So not the background music at a restaurant, not a wedding, but a place where you're getting what you're asking for. It's not a ton of money, but it's good. Sure. What was that like? What was that experience like for you booking those? Because it's different. Back then you didn't have email. I don't think you used it in the same way, at least. And for classical guitar. So what was that experience like?
Good question. It was completely different from it is now. There was no YouTube, there was no internet, there was no, cell phone. But what you did is we started just, people were interested in, because they'd heard of us, just at USC LA Guitar Quartet transitional time. And we started getting a lot of local concerts, not just gigs, but concerts, and where we'd make money depending on how many people came, that kind of thing. Yeah. Still kind of gig money, but concerts.
Right.
And we would drive. John had a old Volvo station wagon, and we would hop in that, and we
Bulletproof.
would drive. It was, yeah, it had taken some bullets, I think, too. It was really old, and 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 we would drive, and we drove everywhere, and we'd end up driving to Arizona and then up to Utah, and just doing. We just saturated the West Coast with us, you
Yeah.
know. And I still think, that's still a good way to establish a career with all the YouTube and everything we have. Just being really active in your own community and your own local area of your city and state, and just your general East Coast, West Coast, the South, whatever, just being a presence there, and just being willing to and happy to play, to offer performances in your area. Word gets out, especially now. But word got out then, and then we used telephones and mail, and you had to have your folder with your flyer and your black and white folder and a cassette, a demo cassette.
Yeah.
And yeah, we got our first management here in LA. Dick Bass was his name, and he through a friend of a friend, and anyway, he started out as our manager, and we got a few higher level gigs from that. And then, including the Hollywood Bowl, which came out of the blue. And then he kind of retired, and the Bass agency kind of dispersed. But since then, we had managers all along. Since that time, so we've had management for some time.
What was it like going back to your education? Because you went back and did a master's, or no, or an artist diploma?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, master's. Yeah. I never did the doctorate because back then, you still could get a teaching job with just a master's, and
Right.
and I was already playing a lot with the group, and I'd won some competitions and still doing competitions, and so I was all about the career, the playing career.
Right.
And so I never went on to any doctorate level. So I just my master's.
What was the difference between yourself, if you can reflect as a player, between the bachelor's and the master's? And answer that anyway, whatever that means to you.
Okay, what was the difference between bachelor's and master's?
Yeah, talk about the growth that you went through as a guitar player.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the education and having less time for the guitar, obviously, because you have other classes.
Right.
That was a big learning curve for me, learning how to balance things, which I have to remind my students about all the time now, but it's just that it's learning balance, right?
Right.
Once I got into master's studies, my class load decreased naturally, fewer units, more work in a way as a grad student, but also I had more time to practice and to learn. And at that point, I was still pursuing competitions. There weren't as many as there are now, but I kept pursuing them and learning new repertoire. And I was just talking yesterday with my students who are doing competitions right now, and how I was one of those people who needed to be told what to learn, because otherwise I would just be happy with, just reading through stacks of music all the time. So I was learning new repertoire because of that. I was, after I got, I got second place in Toronto competition. I started getting, and then won the Tokyo, et cetera. I started getting a lot of offers for solo gigs. And so I started doing a lot of solo. Quartet was still going really full bore. So I was just doing a lot.
What attracted you to competitions?
Well, to say I wasn't a competitive person is not true. I mean, I'm not the person who would want to get out there in any sort of competitive, chess match or guitar competition or
Right.
boxing. If I were, I wouldn't be the type of person to get out there and kick ass.
Right.
Just to do it. Anything I did was kind of competing against myself to see if I could do it. Right. So to see if not just first prize, but to see if I could get a prize. Well, first of all, to see if I could get in. And so there were many where I would record a cassette tape in my living room or something, and I wouldn't get in. I did that a lot, and then finally I started getting in, and so it was all about competing with myself. Actually, that drew me to competitions. And the other thing, truly, it was, looking at the repertoire and seeing the required pieces, and thinking, oh wow, I get to work on the Walton bagatelles,
Right.
and which was a big thing. Otherwise, I knew about them, but I was just too scatterbrained. I was just working on everything. So competitions made me focus, and I enjoyed that.
I can definitely relate to being needing to be told what to learn. I remember as I was putting together my master's program, I was saying to Chris Ladd, what should I do? And he said, well, you have a piece from this era, a piece from this era. What do you want to play? And I was kind of just wanted to say, I don't know, you choose for me. What is something that you look back on and feel like you took away from your competition days?
Well, let's see. I mean, one thing I kind of put into practice now as I take my experiences and I help my students, because I learned how to graciously, accept defeat, I guess, as I was not going to use that word, but defeat.
Right.
And I learned how to, I started developing a strong sense of self-worth, because you never know why you didn't get first or second. If you played really well, it's just a matter of what the judges were looking for. And so I realized that just because I didn't get a first or second doesn't mean I didn't play well.
Right.
And certainly now that I've judged a lot of competitions, that's absolutely true. Also, the competitions that I did, those who might have come out before ahead of me, I was very proactive, and I'd come back and I would start, sending out notices and being, hey, I was in this competition, and I think that the what people still do is they kind of wait for people to knock on their door. Won first prize, so now I'm going to be really busy, and
Right.
nobody knocks on your door. You might get a prize concert or two out of it, but you've got to go out there and let people know. I mean, this was before YouTube. Now, honestly, now you don't need competitions. I mean, it's just something to put on, it's just a way to get another YouTube video or to put something on your bio. But now, you have a good, I was just watching I don't normally watch guitar videos because I get enough during the week, but
Right.
just this morning before I went out today, I was looking at a couple young guitarists who are doing really well on YouTube, and they're good players, and they don't need competitions. I don't know if they've done any or not. I don't know their background, but they're really good players, and so it's different now. And I think it's sad, because I think the competition route is a healthy route. I think you get to learn a lot about the world.
Do you feel like I can see that, and especially the way that you're talking about it, being able to travel, sort of meet judges and other players, and then I'm sure you see those people all around the world, whether it's at more competitions or at a gig or a tour or a festival or something. But what do you think of the idea? And I'm not sold on this idea because I haven't really participated in any competitions you know worth mentioning. But how do you feel about the idea that competitions sort of prepare students to just play clean and fast,
Yeah.
the hardest rep rather than something simpler and more musical? What do you think of that idea?
Excellent, excellent question. There is a competition way of playing. There really is, and it's hard to put a finger on it. It's not necessarily playing flawlessly, but a lot of the more profound players that don't have necessarily the fireworks technique don't always, who are by far the most wonderful to listen to, don't win. I think it is a sense, it is still a competition, and you have to have, at the end, you have to have some criteria to make your decisions with. And that comes down to numbers, and that comes down to little details like, well, did he observe all the fortes in that piece, or stuff like that you would normally think twice about. But yeah, there is a competition style player, and they don't necessarily what should I say? They're not the type of player that I would ever go listen to necessarily. Some competition winners I have gladly gone and heard concerts of. Some, and it's getting to the point now where there are so many winners every year of all these competitions. I don't know their names,
Right.
Because there are a lot of competitions, and so that's good. But also it's kind of watered things down a bit.
Sure.
They're getting less special, I think, the first prizes of a lot of these. So anyway, the best I can answer your question there is to say that the ones who do well in competitions have it down. They kind of know what they need to do, and the repertoire, and
Sure.
little things like not over tuning between pieces and not fidgeting, little things like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm a fan of a lot of players, different style players, and I always felt like, and this goes back to my days as a metal guitarist and a fan of metal, that I had to kind of shatter that idea. Even when I was really good at playing the fast stuff on the electric guitar, then the really technical stuff, I would say to myself and to other people, oh, that's just to service the music. That serves the music. It's not, it's more than just the speed. But I was lying to myself, right? I knew that the ego that I had was inflated with, I have more ability, I have more speed, I have more this or that. And it really took sucking at the classical guitar in my first couple of years of studying it to shatter that, and to really come to the conclusion that stuff is good and it's great, but also there's something that you can't quite grasp about a really beautiful performance, and the answer doesn't always lie with technique. And I use this example whenever I can. There is a video of Oscar Gilia playing the Poulenc Sarabande, which is sight readable to a fairly new guitarist, but listening to him play it, you think what's not printed on the score? There must be something else on the score that I don't see, because there's magic coming out of this. So like, that's kind of my experience with that. Where do you draw the line between viewing technique and technical pieces as the way to go versus what do I really want to express musically?
Exactly. My biggest part of me, the older I get, the more I just want to play beautiful things, make beautiful sounds. And it was fun. It was fun, flexing my younger muscles, and doing all the fast stuff, which I did, and I think I did it really well, and it was fun.
Yeah.
And I still do that, and I feel actually I've gotten better at that, but I don't want to do that nearly as much. I want to play. There was a period where several people would write pieces for me, and it was extremely grateful and pleased that they did that. But they always involved some kind of loud Roschiatos or tremolo and stuff. All that stuff I would do when I was younger. And there's a piece that a good friend of mine in the quartets, Ian Krauss, that he wrote for me. And it was based, because we're both fans of Edgar Allan Poe. And it was based on the fall of the House of Usher.
Hold on, let me get the book.
Okay.
Okay, here we go.
Oh, look at that.
You remember? Do you remember Borders?
Sure do.
The ancient bookstore.
Oh, I miss it so much.
Look at those silver pages.
Wow,
Continue.
wow, wow. Good for you. Well, actually, no, that cover is a perfect visual, because the piece Ian wrote for me it's called Roderick Usher's Phantasmian Sonata. And the title page, I don't have it here, unfortunately. I didn't think I would be talking about it, but title page, you open it, it's this sort of spiral bound thing that he did at Kinko's. And the title page has this sort of fake bloody thing running down, and
Yeah.
very cool, right? And Ian Krauss is a serious composer. I mean, but he had fun doing this. Well, anyway, bottom line is, I worked it up and premiered it, and it was so hard. It was so hard. And he knew it. He knows. And whenever I talk to him too, we still talk about, it's hard. He writes hard music, but it was so hard that it wasn't sustainable for me. I mean, it just wasn't. So I haven't done it in a very long time. It's a great piece.
Yeah.
But, and not that I can't do all of the pyrotechnics and sustain intensity, but just that my metabolism's different. I just kind of, I don't want, I kind of don't want to. It would be nice to, but I kind of want to move on to beauty. And
there's a lot of people that do that. The stuff that you don't really feel attracted to anymore. There's a lot of people that do that. There's not a lot of people that make the same piece or the same kind of piece that we've been hearing forever the most beautiful thing in the world. And I feel like that leads us to something big that you did, which is the recent release of the Scarlatti.
Oh,
right? Because that's an example of music that I think guitarists are briefly exposed to, especially in the academic world. Here's this guy Scarlatti. We can play his music if we want to, but we play Bach because Bach is better. Is the attitude that you get sometimes, and then putting not a new spin, but putting a refined appreciation onto it.
mm-hmm.
Right. That's when you were saying that you want to play things that are beautiful and you want to play things that make you happy. That's what I thought of was that the recent release.
Right. Thank you. No, it's I got to record what I wanted to on that, and I'm really happy about that. I'm happy with the way it turned out. And going back to things like the Roderick Usher's Phantasmian, it's beautiful music. It's deeply, it's really profound, and it's just I think it might be better perhaps in a different setting rather than just solo guitar. It's just so big.
Yeah.
And Ian's music is just really profound, very deep, and very beautiful. And I've always loved and will always love his music. But that and some other pieces that were written for me, which I at some point I need to record. I really do. But they were more fun to do when I was younger.
Yeah. Yeah.
When I had more angst and stuff to let out.
How do you think about how your interpretation of a piece or your sort of execution of a piece and the musical aspect?
Right. Well, the Grand Overture, actually, I over the years I had actually performed it even faster, and that's mainly because of adrenaline, not necessarily out of a sound musical decision. But for those recordings like the Grand Overture and all the Rodrigo that I did, which is out of print, I think that's a shame because I put a lot of work into all that. But my primary concern was to relay the general mood, the general story, opera. Giuliani, that's a good composer to talk about because everything he did was pretty much operatic. It was either in terms of some kind of a conversation between tenor and soprano or bass and whatever, or it was a just an outright song like an aria. And so, but I felt that tempo I recorded that at, just at the time, spoke to me the best in terms of the nature, the character of the piece.
Mhm.
And so that's that was the only reason I did that tempo. Was I had to work out, specifically technically how to do certain things in it.
Mhm.
But otherwise, if I'd taken it slower, I don't know what else stylistically I would have done with it. So I kind of chose the tempo based on how I saw the character, and
Yeah.
that's with anything I play.
Right. What's the I would imagine the more you play of a specific genre of music, the easier it is to find the character. But what do you do, or what have you done in the past when there's you're having a hard time figuring out what a piece is what a piece is asking you to do beyond just hitting the right notes?
Right. Well, that happens a lot. And uh, you have to, at first, if you just can't decide, you have to pretend, and you have to make up a story or a narrative about it, or just dig deep. What feeling does it ignite mostly in you? And kind of just play with that. Later, as you are able to digest it more and live with it and sing with it more, uh, it mellows out. All of the indecisions kind of even themselves out, and you kind of commit and feel more comfortable and settled in how you're going to interpret something. So at first, if you're not feeling it, and this goes back to competitions too, learning things that you don't necessarily like all the time, but you have to learn to like it, or else you're going to be miserable playing it all the time.
Right.
You have to find something in it that you like, and highlight those things first, and later things, I don't know, things just mellow out. And not that I end up loving all of that music. I sometimes just drop it after it's done and I'm done with it. But I always find something to love about it along the way.
Do you feel like that influences sort of the genre of music that you gravitate toward?
Well, for me, it has to do with style. And again, now that the older I'm getting, I kind of want to just play more of the styles I love. I love French Baroque. I love Baroque music, specifically French.
Mhm.
I just, if I'm allowed to listen to something for an afternoon in the Baroque, it won't necessarily be Bach. It'll be Rameau or Lully. And I just love the French style. Can't describe it. And so there's not a lot you can play on guitar, but there is some things you can try, and I love doing that. And then there are things within the Spanish style, the classic Spanish style. I mean, there are new contemporary, of course, Spanish composers who are using their Spanish roots and doing new music, or their Cuban roots doing new music. But if you take the classic Spanish style, Rodrigo and Taroba and Albéniz and Granados, etc., even within that style, there are certain people I like better than others just because of their style. So you have these sub styles within a style. Like Rodrigo within Spanish music, I love.
Right.
Albéniz is fantastic, but I don't gravitate towards it. I gravitate towards Rodrigo. And if it were me, if I had my say, I'd be very comfortable just playing Dowland the rest of my life, and the old, Renaissance English music. I think for me, Dowland is equally as great a composer as Bach, in that what he did on a relatively limited instrument was absolutely mind blowing. The counterpoint and just the mastery of what he could do. So I just love Dowland. It kind of speaks to me. I guess if you're you know, if you believe in past lives, maybe I was a, you know, fly on the wall or something of that period. But I love it.
Well, it sounds like I mean, any classical musician could probably relate to this, but it seems like you have a couple ties to like the English and that kind of stuff. I mean, you talked about the Bagatelles, right? And I believe William Allen was English. Is that correct?
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
you're talking about possibly when you were younger going to London, and now you're talking about this stuff now. I think that's incredible. What attracts you to the sound of a guitar? Because I will hear some like a beautiful recording, and then I will play a guitar similar to that, or I will see or I'll hear that guitar at a concert, and I'll think that's great for them, but I only really enjoy the sound that I make when I'm behind this guitar or that guitar. So what attracts you to picking up and playing a guitar?
Yeah, you know, what you just said is correct. You know, what one player stands behind and plays all the time isn't necessarily the guitar that you would like to play all the time, and it's very true. I've gone when I was able to. I mean, I stuck with my Ramirez for the first few years until my parents bought me, and then bought a Rodriguez, sold that, bought a Rodriguez from Pepe, I believe. Played that for a long time, and then I started getting to different guitars built for me, and I've loved them all. I had fun with all of them, but it was the type of thing where, first of all, I've never was and will never be a collector. It's not my nature to just amass things like that, and so usually to get one guitar built for me, I would have to sell a guitar. Sometimes not, but basically I've only bought guitars because I wanted to play them, and I have played every single one of them. Had fun with them. I played a Simon Marty. In fact, I had two of them. One he built for me, and then later I bought one locally. I forget from who or what, but what the circumstances were. But they were really fun. They had that Marty characteristic, very heavy guitar, physically heavy guitar, and it was kind of like a race car, where the attack was phenomenal, and the volume was incredible, and but then I just started then gravitating towards guitar with maybe more sustain or more where I could do a melody up here in this position rather than just some of those guitars with that boomy quality, right? Like the Rodriguez I had. To some extent, the Damen. I played a Damen for 10 years straight, and it was beautiful. It was a lot of fun. But some of those guitars that have that initial boom to the attack, which is fun, a lot of those guitars don't sing too well. And again, it depends on the player too. But for me, I started gravitating towards guitars that I felt could really sing. And I had a beautiful Daniel Friedrich back in around 1990 or so. And it was the pride of my life, my baby. I became pretty good friends with him. I had to go over there and pick it up from his shop. And thanks to a good friend of mine, Olivier Chassin, this guitarist then he was living in Paris still, I think. But anyway, I had that for a while. Due to various circumstances and having no money in those years, literally a car accident made me sell that, plus pretty much half of the things I owned at the time. And I'd love to get that guitar back. But I like that guitar because it just sang. I could play anywhere on the neck, and it just sang. So that got me. Then I realized after that I just really, really love guitars that sustain.
Yeah.
And that I can sing on. So since then, it's been a search. I come in, I love guitars, obviously. And if I were rich, I would have a lot of guitars, because I see all my friends who build guitars at the GFA conventions and over in Germany, and there's always a guitar that I'd love to buy, and I would have them all right here in my home.
Yeah.
But luckily, in a way for me, not being able to just randomly buy any old guitar has saved me a lot of grief, I think, because I wouldn't know what to do with all those guitars. I mean,
Right.
you know,
And,
so
and the only way to really understand an instrument and really learn something about it is to spend a lot of time with it. And if you have 20 guitars, you're not going to spend as much time with one as you would if you had 3 guitars.
right, exactly.
I'm right now playing a guitar that was built. I was initially playing a guitar by Alan Chapman that was built in like the Smallman style, and while I thought I wanted that sound and was committed to buying a guitar like that, I really wanted something a little bit less. I don't know what the proper term is, like boxy, sort of like he did a great job on it, but I wanted something that was a little bit just guitar, just a regular old guitar with a singing quality. And so and then I bought another one that he built in the style of an O'Leary, and I love this guitar, but it took me a long time, even though it was the sound I wanted, to really understand what the guitar was capable of, or what was me needing to change my idea of what the guitar was, or me needing to change a nail or something like that. Because, you know, you really need to spend that time with the instrument.
Exactly. Yeah, that's true. That's
Yeah.
true. I mean, I know there are certain qualities I know literally if I just literally take a guitar and strum the open strings.
Yeah.
I know if it's a guitar I want to pick up and start playing more, or if I don't.
Yeah.
And that's my first test, is I just take the open string, I strum it. And if something goes, wait a minute, and I want to play it some more, then I'm in danger of owning another guitar, you know? So, but yeah, I'm with you there. You know, they're appealing traits to those, to almost any style of guitar. That's the one you're talking about, the Smallman kind of style.
Yeah.
And I know Alan's guitars really well. I actually played a concert one
Yeah.
time. I was at the Hart School there with one of his guitars. But you know, it boils down to this. It boils down to having a guitar that does everything you want it to do. And it would be nice too if it had some volume, because and the sense of volume has changed a lot over the years too, because guitars have gotten a lot louder. But it has to have the traits you like, and has to do everything you want it to do, whether it's tone color, whether it's singing on a certain string. Maybe you want an awesome B string, and you find the guitar that does that. That's great.
Yeah.
That's totally valid. But ultimately, that's why, you know, in our quartet, we did this experiment long time ago. Like when we were first getting together, we tried to use all the same instrument. So we all, I think, had a Rodriguez at the time. And you know what? It didn't sound like we're all playing Rodriguez's. We thought it would make us sound more homogenous, you know, across the group. But it didn't really. What we discovered over the years is that if we each play a guitar we love and that fits us, we blend much better.
Right. Absolutely.
And the guitars couldn't be more different.
Yeah. I remember it was a conversation with somebody else when I was leaving the Hart School, as I was finishing my master's. I was thinking, you know, a lot of us get our guitars from the same guy, but I'm sure that I could tell who's playing, you know, with a pair of headphones on and my eyes closed, because we all sound completely different. Okay, so actually, I asked some people online if they had any questions on the Instagram, and a lot of people asked about pumping nylon. So I guess to start this little segment off, I'll just ask you what that was like writing that book. I know in the very beginning you say this is not a method book. This is just a collection of resources and problem solving tactics. But what was that like for you?
Well, it was quite the project. It started out of my desire to have all of these handwritten Xerox pages in one place that I would take to my students, and I would develop, you know how it is, last minute, that morning you think, oh, for my class, this is what we need to do today, and you make something
Yeah,
up.
sure.
And then you refine it over time as you teach it. I had all this stuff, as we all do, and so I thought, this is ridiculous. And I did kind of compile it. And then, and I've always wanted to do a book called Pumping Nylon, because one of my favorite, I was really into weightlifting when I was in junior high and high school. Not that I was, I didn't have a coach or anything. I just loved lifting weights. I would watch, that was my favorite Olympic event. And my favorite book at the time was this book by Franco Columbo, who was a training partner of Arnold.
Mm-hmm.
And Pumping Iron, of course, was the Bible, and that the movie and all. So I always thought it would be funny because people would ask me to teach them technique specifically. And I always thought, well, it'd be fun to write something called Pumping Nylon. And so I had all these materials, and at this workshop at the National Guitar Workshop, when it existed, I did this masterclass, and I asked, can I just title this masterclass Pumping Nylon, and let's see what happens. and it did, they were getting full classes for these events anyway, so the class was full.
Yeah.
And then Jim Ferguson, who was editor for the Guitar Player magazine at the time, came. And I said, that's great, but you need a guitar, because everybody has to have a guitar.
Right.
So he brought his classical, and I took him through like an hour and a half of like an aerobics class for guitar, and it was so much fun. So he published an article called Pumping Nylon. And from there, I thought, okay, this could work out. I asked him if it was okay if I used the title. And so I proposed it to two publishers, literally gave a phone call to two friends I know who have publishing companies. One said, nah, they weren't really into that. It wouldn't sell. And the other one said, okay, let's do it.
Yeah.
And so, and my point, honestly, the honest truth is that I just wanted somebody to print it so I could use it. I thought this is such a niche thing.
Yeah.
It's never going to sell ever, but I just want to be able to get copies for me and my classes,
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's how it started, honestly. It was me putting all this stuff together. The hard part was, oh God, when was it? It was published in what, 93 or 95?
Let me take a
Thanks. All right, thanks. I should know this, but I've kind of squashed it deep down. The original should be 93, 95, something like that.
Well, the dates are in Roman numeral or in letters.
XVM and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, so
Okay.
that's not happening for me.
You know what? Actually, you know what? It was 95 because
June
what was it,
1995.
95, thank you.
Yep.
Yes. And what was my point?
I pick things up and I put them down.
Yeah. Yes. You have to feel the pump.
Hans and Franz.
Well, the basically, I know what I was going to say. I got my first, partly because of this project, I got my first computer, and it was an Apple, and it was one of those computers that, it came with 4 meg of RAM, expandable to 16. And I was so excited by that.
Wow.
Thinking that, well, imagine if I need it ever, I can expand this to 16 meg of RAM, And so, and it came with the word processing, program on it, whatever it was at the time. And I used that, but the big problem was they wanted me to submit essentially how they wanted to lay it out. So I had to give them, I had to type up the text, in real time and then leave a square for whatever picture. And in the picture I have to put insert photo 1A here. And I would do that for the however 100 pages or so I did. And it took a long time. It took 2 years to finish it. So I started it in like 93 and it was published late in 95. Just because of that, just because of the layout.
Right.
So that was the hardest thing about it. But I was so glad to get it done. I was so glad to get the copies. And I was so happy. I took all the free copies I got and just gave them to all my students, you know.
I was going to say, did you fulfill your goal of being able to give something to your students?
Oh yeah. And then afterwards, I felt guilty because afterwards I'm thinking, gosh, now I'm that guy who pushes my book on people. And I felt bad, and I still do. I'm not the type of person that, you have Humpy Nylon, you got to get it.
Yeah.
I'm not that kind of guy. But there are some instances where there's something I really want to focus on, and it happens to be in the book.
Right.
And nowadays, of course, it's I ask them, do you have the book by chance? Oh yeah, I've got it right here. And they show me I saw one with had Russian titles on it. And thinking, okay, that's where we live right now. Everything's for free. And
on the website.
Yeah, there are these websites you go to. I won't name names.
Right.
You all out there know what I'm talking about.
Well, it's in Russian, so I don't. Do you speak Russian?
I understand. I can read Cyrillic.
Oh, really?
You know, I mean, I can kind of pound things out by sound.
Oh, wow.
But I don't speak Russian.
Wow.
But I can tell your name or my name if I'm reading Cyrillic. Anyway,
wow, that's really cool. That's really cool.
So I thought, okay, sometimes I see it, you know, having been downloaded like that. But I don't push it on anybody. But
Right.
I was very happy to have it done. And later, of course, the publisher wanted kind of follow-ups, like they wanted a method out of me, and I started a method series for them.
Mm-hmm.
And they said they would allow me then to do a different expanded version of Pumping Nylon. It took a while for them to materialize. So I did a couple. I never finished my full method because I wasn't into it. I mean, there's so many good methods out there. I didn't think the world needed a method for me.
Right.
But we did kind of expand. We have Pumping Nylon repertoire, beginning to intermediate and intermediate to advanced, and we went through all these different.
I like that book. The one that came out more recently with the repertoire.
Oh yeah, that's the final. That's the second edition, which is the most current edition.
I like that one because when I was teaching, I would give a lot of that rep to students. And a lot of it was, even if they weren't working on something, even if that etude or that piece wasn't addressing anything specifically that they needed. I remember I had one student who was preparing like a 30-minute program, and she was playing one of the preludes from the Vice D minor. It was like something, it was a bunch of like, pretty nice rep. And then I flipped through those pages, and I was like, "Oh, why don't you learn this one? This one's, so it's really accessible music, and that's one of the things I really liked about it."
Well, thanks. Well, that's good to hear. I was wondering if it would be of any help. I ended up using it for some of my students too, but it was good to do.
Yeah.
So
cool. Okay. And another thing that I wanted, you mentioned National Guitar Workshop. I have a funny story about those guys. That was in Connecticut, yeah?
Yeah.
They were stationed in Connecticut. So when I was 17 years old, my friends and I drove down to go, and we snuck in. None of us paid the tuition, but we snuck into a Michelangelo Badio masterclass. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
Yeah. Oh, sure.
And it was the one of the best bonding experiences I had with my friends, because the masterclass was just so ridiculous. He was the nicest guy in the world, Michelangelo Badio. but some of his ideas were just really eccentric, and he was the three of us are sitting there, and a friend of mine who is just a smart aleck, he yelled out, "Can you play?" He said, "Are there any questions?" And he said, "Can you play the blues?" And he queued up this this backing track and just shredded over the blues. It was just chromatic scales left and right, notes flying all over the place. And it was, he talked about his approach to the blues, and it was cool, but it was a fun time.
Mhm.
And I actually worked for Nat Gnode. I think he was a part of it right before they sort of dissolved and sort of disappeared. They had a company called Day Jams,
Yep.
which was like a rock camp, and I was one of the camp directors or whatever. But they seem like nice guys, and I'm not quite sure. I'm not a businessman, so I don't really know how that stuff works. But I liked the space and the school that they rented out in Connecticut,
Yep.
and
New
I
Milford.
liked, yeah, and I really liked the idea, and there doesn't seem to be anything like that geared toward the younger generation on a national scale. I mean, you
Yeah.
go town to town, and there's the Philadelphia Guitar Society, and there's all these wonderful places to go, but they're very insular, and
Mhm.
this was a sort of a something that attracted people from all over the globe, which was kind of cool.
It was great. They had a good thing going on. They're all good educators. And Nat, of course, Nat Gano was the editor for all of my books and many others too
Yeah,
for Alfred. So
yeah. Cool. Well, we have a whole bunch of notes here. We are winding down. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to hit you with the 5-question lone guitarist questionnaire.
okay.
Now you can answer these questions in any. They can be short answers. They can be long answers. They could be stories. You can
Okay.
mime it out. You could mime it out if you want. I don't know. Whatever you feel like to.
Okay.
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 Are you ready?
I
I'm
think
gonna.
so.
I'm
I'm
gonna.
a little
Yeah.
scared now.
Yeah. I'm gonna insert some. Make a note. Insert dramatic music. Okay. Question number 1. Scott Tennant. Dun 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 dun. What is the best gig you've ever had?
Oh, well, it depends. I mean, do you mean like a one-off gig and the gig itself, or was it like a more like a teaching gig or a
I don't. I think gig is anything, right? Because like a
Mhm.
gig could be I won a competition and got a concert out of it, or a gig could be the best teaching gig, or it could be
Hands down the best gig I've ever been a part of was when our quartet worked with John Cleese.
mm,
And to me that was uh Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan and everybody put together, and that was my idol
yeah,
of all time. And we got to do this Don Quixote performance with him, where we did this thing with old Spanish music, uh, and then an actor, in this case John Cleese, would read this script from um, uh, the Don Quixote uh, text
right.
that Bill Cannengeiser edited down to this really 3-act thing. It was so much fun, and John Cleese was the first person that we did that with.
Wow.
So
Was it
it's
was it
just
serious, or was it a sort of a comedic?
he would read, and the idea, he was just reading from a podium, and
Oh
we were
wow.
playing. We were on either side of him, and the timing. So he had to do different. In his case, they were all British with British accents, but he had to do this old wretched woman, and then he had to do this like country bumpkin, and then Don Quixote himself. So he did these different characters, and he was very good at. But he told us, okay, gents, he goes, uh, just you have to understand. Um, he said something like, to the British, music is just organized noise. And so he said, I can't tell you, you can't, if you tell me to come in when you play a loud chord, I can't do that. But if you tell me sit out for 7.5 seconds, I can do that because that's what I do.
Wow.
And so Bill said, okay, then. So here you're silent for almost 11 seconds. And then here, you got to talk for just over a minute. And he did it.
Wow.
And it was so much fun. We only did one show. And then he said, he was going through a big divorce. He said, guys, I need more voiceover work because of this. So I won't be able to do this with you for a while. So
Yeah.
we later we did it with Phil Proctor from Firesign Theater.
Okay.
But that's my dream gig. Nothing will ever come close to that.
That's so cool too, because that really takes the idea of classical guitar, and which I think I've been coming to this realization, and Pat Kearney, who was a couple guests before you had said it too, is classical guitar is a very progressive instrument where we're always looking for ways within ourselves to innovate, and that's such a nice way to make a connection between genres and art forms, and then do it on such a level. I mean, how could you not enjoy his acting? I mean, he's a legend.
Oh yeah.
Question number 2.
Okay.
What was your worst gig?
Gosh. Not that I've had so many, I can't think of one. It's just I think I've had many more good ones than bad ones. There's always, even the really horrible ones where something bad happened, there's always something good that came out of it, like like providing something for my friends to laugh at. I'll tell you, oh gosh, it was a great experience, but I'm sure there were worse gigs than this. But when we were still just, I was a grad student, and we were asked to come to Mexico to do this culture exchange. Some groups from there would come here, some groups from here, from USC specifically, go to Mexico and do this tour. We were chosen, and we did this, and we were the USC guitar quartet still. This was back in, I don't know, 1989 or 88 or something. And so we did, I think it was, see how long it was 50, we did something like 50 some concerts in like 4.5 weeks or 5 weeks or something. Like, we did a lot of shows, and we were specifically assigned to an area of Mexico. Each group was our area was the Yucatan. Okay. And Durango. So we had the desert in Durango,
right?
And then the other half was down in the Yucatan, in the jungle, literally. They assigned us a driver and a van, and we would, so we'd go from one hotel, then we'd snake our way through the jungle and these roads. Here's the village. You're going to play there tonight at a Casa de Cultura.
Okay.
And that's what we did. And we had one afternoon off, and we were near Cancun. Mm-hmm. So we went to some beach around there, and we thought, wow, have the day. All we have is a concert tonight. So Mr. Gringo here, like, freckles and the super white skin. I got in that water, and I was just like doing the floating thing all day. I was just out in the sun, and and everybody's telling me, hey, watch out, you could get burned. And whatever sunscreen I put, I would wash off. I was just in the water all day. Oh, this is great.
It's
so
beautiful.
I got it's beautiful water. And it's right where the Gulf of Mexico and something else meet. The Atlantic, I guess. Anyway, it's right where
two. Isn't that the Mediterranean?
No, this is down in Mexico. It would be, the water there is my point is the water there is very clear, and it amplifies the sun like a magnifying glass. So I got out of the ocean. We went back quickly to shower and go to the gig.
Yeah.
And I started feeling nauseous, and I thought, wow, what's going on? Did I drink water? Oh no. But by the time the concert came, and this was we would just dress whatever we had on and play
Right.
these concerts for large audiences. I mean, the locals would come out and hear us. So, but I was feeling really sick. I mean, very nauseous. And by the end of that concert, I couldn't move. I felt like somebody had put packing tape around my back, and my buddies looked there and they said, "Wow, you are burned. I mean, you've got bubbles." They were starting to swell up,
Oh my goodness.
and I looked like bubble wrap. I mean, but large bubbles. And a
Sorry.
doctor who happened to be there looked at it and goes, "This is bad." He said, "You have to go to a clinic, but they're all closed right now. But you have to go tomorrow first thing and get this taken care of, because you could die." I mean, it was like a 2nd-degree burn all over my back and my neck.
Oh my goodness.
And so I had to sleep that. And he said, "By the way, you need a mosquito net, because if a mosquito gets in there, you're going to get a disease." So that night we found a mosquito net, and there was a chair. I was sharing my room with John, I remember, in the quartet. So he was sleeping on one of the beds, and I had to sit upright in a chair all night like this with a net over me, because I couldn't lean on anything. I couldn't burst the bubbles, or else I'd get infected. It was a horrible night. And the next day I went to a clinic somewhere literally in the jungle, and they laid me on the table and they punctured everything and poured alcohol and doused it with. And then I went to a gig, and we played an afternoon gig, and I was bandaged up. And for a couple concerts, I had the shirt draped over me like Elvis, right? No, just bare chested. And I sat like this, and I'm going, "Okay, guys, hand me my guitar." And because I couldn't move, and I was still in a lot of pain. And we played the concert, and if there was a page turn, one of them would have to do it. And then they took the guitar afterwards, and then and I was bandaged up like a mummy. And that passed, and I still have scars from that. But that was such a bad experience. Wonderful people though, but it was really bad experience for me.
Oh my God. Well, I'm glad. Yeah, I'm glad you're alive. Those are really scary, because a lot of times when you're young, you don't realize the things that could kill you. You don't. Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Mhm. But everybody
That's
had a good laugh.
Yeah.
My nickname was Mr. Bubble. And
Oh.
right, isn't it cute? And that's the quartet calling me that. And the doctors would just kind of go, "Oh, what a gringo, you're out in the sun, and you guys shouldn't do that."
Yeah.
And they're right. I was Mr. Stupid Gringo out there in the sun.
Question number 3 is a question I usually ask, but also was asked by our friend from Heart, Peter, not Peter Clemente, Peter Davis, who's a student, and he sort of sent this question in, and I'm going to combine it with mine, which is, what is the best piece of advice, and who gave it to you, playing or not?
Oh gosh. Well, I can't narrow that down to one best piece of advice. It's a combination between my dad, who passed away when I was 18. So he just retired and passed away. So we never got really quality time. He was always working. And so, but part of it was from him, and maybe the advice from him was, I was in doing some studying one day in my room, and he came in. One of the rare times he wasn't working. And he said, "Scott, I'm really proud of you. And I notice when you walk, you hold your head down all the time. I need you to hold your head up." And that doesn't sound like a big deal, but it's true. I was always absorbed in some kind of, it's always thinking, and whenever I'd walk, and I'd look down at the ground all the time, and I'd run into things, and I got made fun of it, of that thing, looking down, and he saw that, and walking to school one day, he saw me out the window, and he told me to hold my head up, and that really stuck with me. It wasn't, it was literally to hold my head up so I didn't get run over, but
Yeah.
he meant it a little bit more deeply. He meant it like, you can't go through life like that. which I could have easily done had it gone unnoticed. I mean, I still have a tendency to do that, just, always in my thoughts. And
Right.
but it was him saying, just, I need you to hold your head up.
Yeah.
And I do have to think about that once in a while, and on stage as well,
Right.
because I'm not an extrovert at all, not at all. So for me, I like sharing music, but I'm not a performer. I do perform, but I'm getting to dislike that term more and more, just because it implies, kind of, I guess, showing off or whatever. I don't know. But holding my head up is one thing that's gotten me through a lot.
There's something really easy. It's very easy to not engage in the current moment, and that's something that when you were speaking about that, I was thinking, yeah, for me, it's really hard to. I do the same thing when I'm driving or when I'm walking around the halls at school, or I'm on my phone and doing something that's not engaging in the present moment, which is such a a a shame, but it's also something that doesn't happen. Like when you're on stage, you have to be engaged in the present moment, right? If you're thinking about the note that's coming next or the piece that's coming next or dinner, I mean, those thoughts come into your head, but in order to get the best performance, you really have to be in the present moment of not before and not and like this much ahead, right? I'm thinking of this much future, not
Mhm.
this much. And so I can definitely relate to that. That's wonderful advice.
Well, the one
Um,
other piece I have to say, though,
yeah.
the second part to that was, I had to be. I was thinking about it. It was probably Pepe Romero who uh, gave me this advice, and this is advice I give my students now. Um, but because I was this sort of, self-effacing, holding my head down, and people would
Mhm.
compliment me, and I would kind of go, all the mistakes I made and all this stuff, and I would kind of uh, not tell them they were wrong, but basically say, that wasn't very good. And Pepe basically, he told me, you got to stop doing that. Uh, when somebody compliments you, graciously accept it. Which I noticed, it dawned on me the minute he said that. I immediately had all these visions come back to me where I was backstage with Pepe, with
Right.
all these people thanking him, and he would just be so gracious and wonderful to everybody. And he later, we had a talk about it. He said, what we do goes beyond being a performer on stage. It has to do with, in a large sense, to do with healing. We've all been to concerts, heard people play, even seen a movie, heard a poem that spoke to us in a way that healed us in some
Mhm.
small way. And he said that uh, you're sharing music with people. You should be happy about that. Just think about sharing the music. Don't think about, whether it was a good flawless performance or not. If it touched somebody, that's sincere. So you should be gracious about that.
Mm.
And so
And
I've
that
never
goes
done
back
that
to
since.
right. No, that's wonderful. That goes back to your comment earlier of just wanting to play music that you enjoy.
Mhm.
And why would you go play something? Uh, why would you go share something that you've been practicing if you hate it, or if you just you know Chris would always say, just go show them what you love about the piece, right?
Nice. That's
and
exactly
so
it.
and so how can you be concerned about, if you drop some notes, or if you have a slip and fix it, or like all of those things, when you think about, I'm just going to show you what I like about this piece, all of those
Exactly.
things start to get smaller and smaller. That's wonderful advice. I hope to meet him someday, Pepe, and in my travels. Okay, question number 4. What never fails to inspire you?
Mm. Uh, Success stories. I'm kind of addicted to them. And it almost doesn't matter what the story is about. Just hearing somebody personally about somebody personally conquer something in their lives is always moving to me, and it kind of makes me want to go that extra, give that extra effort, you know.
Yeah.
So I'll, you know, again, it could be, you know, how it could be musical, it could be how somebody, you know, you know, went from zero to being a great athlete, how somebody turned their life around by getting their health in order, their health together. It just, you know, every day I read or hear something that inspires me. So it's success stories.
Wow. It's wonderful. And then the last question is, what is your current favorite non-music or guitar related hobby to engage in?
Hmm. Well, lately it's been watching TV because there's not much,
There's not much to
you
do.
know, there's not much happening. I'll tell you one thing that I've tried before, and I need to go for this again, but I love archery, and I was never that good at it because I never got really a chance to stick to it for any spell. But it's something I'd like to engage in more, just the, you know, the target practice and Olympic style, something about it. At one point it was darts. I was very good at darts. I would carry my own dart set around the world with me in my suitcase
Nice.
and play whenever I could, not competitively and for money, just for fun. So, and I love anything with gears, bikes, watches. It's
Got my Speedmaster just for you.
lovely. Thanks. I have my Seamaster just over there.
Oh yeah. Would you get the new
Yeah.
one?
No, this is one I found. My watch guy, you know, near here, who I had taken watches to before, always has a little special something in the back, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, he pulled, yeah, I want to show you this. So he came out and showed me this beautiful, I think it's a 43. No, this one's a 45 millimeter. Anything smaller than that looks way too small on me. You can see
I'm curious. Yeah, I can
see the tan line. Just see, look at that.
I'm not taking mine off. Mine is whiter. Mine is whiter than yours. What's I'm curious, what is it? 45? Is it the Planet Ocean, the orange one?
Not the orange one. That I had one of those. That was my first good watch a long time ago.
The Planet Ocean.
And then the
Wow,
Planet
nice.
Ocean. It was my first good watch. I bought it new at a duty free in Beijing.
Wow.
And I thought, wow, this is great. And then you get, I was really obsessed. You know, you sell and trade and like guitars, and I found it a lot of fun. I just think it's such a great art form, you know, designing these watches and the gears. One of my favorite companies right now is very simple, from Detroit, Shinola.
Yeah, sure.
And they make good quartz movement watches. They also make automatic watches, but they really make a solid product.
Yeah.
And who's the rock guitarist that retired from? He went to Switzerland to study watchmaking, and
yeah, I know exactly who you're talking about.
keep forgetting his name and the band he was with.
There's an article from Hodinkee about him. I'll send that to you.
Hmm.
It wasn't the guy from Kiss. The drummer from Kiss was on the website. Who's that? Peter Criss? No,
Peter Criss. Yeah, he was the drummer, right?
he was the drummer.
Or was
I'm
he
not
was
sure.
he the other guitarist?
I think he was the other guitarist, but he was on one of the reviews. But I know who you're talking about, and I think he has his own company. Is that correct?
Yes, he does now.
Yeah,
But I mean, covered with tats, right? Just,
yeah,
you know, from head to toe, and he just had this passion and he went for it.
Yeah.
His
So
watches
things
are way beyond my wallet, but you know,
things with gears and things like that,
Mhm.
that really inspires. That's awesome.
Yeah, I like bikes too, even though I don't ride them as much as I like. I mean, I used to be a bike fanatic when I was a kid,
Sure.
and take a bike apart, put it back together, and I don't know. I like gears.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Scott, for hanging out with me. It has been a pleasure, and we hope to see you in person soon.
The pleasure was all mine, and I look forward to seeing you in person as well.